Hey team, welcome back to my backyard kitchen. And today we're going to cook one of my favourite dishes. It's been on the menu forever at Nunu. And it's a preparation of raw yellowfin tuna with some beautiful mungali quark and then a really delicious little recipe, one of my favourites actually, of very fine pickled vegetables. It's an absolute delicious hit when it works. In the wrong hands it can be a train wreck, but when it's handled with a little bit of panache, it's absolutely exceptional. So our first preparation today is going to be something we call at the restaurant mirepoix, which is a little bit disingenuous to be honest, because mirepoix is traditionally, or it's a rough cut of vegetables used to flavour stock. And you use things like carrots and celery and onions, but I've loved this idea my whole life of making the underdog the hero and turning the humble carrot and celery and onion, the bottom of the veggie bin, into something truly delicious, like really wondrous. Really, its success, the cornerstone of its success, is beautiful knife work. It's absolutely essential that we have really sharp knives for this preparation, because we don't want the flavours to bleed together. You know, if you mash stuff up and if you've got a blunt knife and you're bruising the vegetables, we're going to end up with almost like a soup flavour as opposed to something really quite elegant and exquisite. So, as I said, we're going to start with some carrot and some celery and some onion, and just going to dice it up into a really fine, beautiful brunoise. With a beautiful sharp knife, we just want to cut a very fine, perfect brunoise of our vegetables. And there really is an optimal size for this. We're looking for it to be not too fine so it doesn't become lost in the dish, but not so large either that it becomes sort of cumbersome and a bit of a chore to eat. We want it to really be just perfect little squares. And of course the humble onion. So we want to use a red onion for this preparation. It's just a little bit sweeter and has a beautiful colour once it's cooked. So, a nice little fine dice of the onion as well. Probably a bit too much, I don't need that much there. So we also need a really fine slice of garlic. And as I said, you need a razor sharp knife for this. It should just be like paper. Okay, and I also had a daikon in the bottom of the veggie bin, so I'm going to put a couple of little squares of that in as well. This daikon has a really fantastic peppery flavour. It's also crisp and sweet like a green apple sometimes. That's ready to go. So now we just want to cook this off really gently in some olive oil. So choose a really beautiful oil and give it a good lash, and we don't want it too hot. And into that goes our vegetables, and there should be the lightest of hisses. Not searing hot, just a really beautiful simmer. And whilst that might look pretty innocuous, this is going to be truly delicious. Now a pinch of salt. We just want it to come alive. We don't want those squares to break down or get mushy. Just want them to be simmered, almost stewed in the warm oil. And the perfume coming out of this pan is just delicious. It's like the start of a soup or a sauce. And we're looking for those vegetables to just become slightly translucent, so that they're almost not see-through and soft, but just softening up, and that's them ready to go now. So we take that off the heat so it doesn't keep cooking. And we need to retard the cooking with a little bit of vinegar. So I've got sherry vinegar here, but red wine vinegar would be great as well. And we want it to be quite acidic. Now also, just give it another stir so it's not getting too hot in any one place. And I also want to give it a little lick of honey. Now I've talked about this stuff before. My mate Kyle, I think, has some of the most incredible honey in far north Queensland. And this stuff is from Trinity Inlet. So that's at the next to Cairns, deep into the mangroves, and the smell, it's like sour and it's truly magical stuff. So just a little splash of that honey. Mind you, I can drink this stuff by the tablespoon. Pop that over there. Give it another stir to make sure that we've got the honey and vinegar everywhere. And then while it's off the heat, I'm just going to pull some of this beautiful thyme into the hot vegetables, and a little just waken up. So a few little floury tips. Oh, and the perfume coming up out of the fry pan is just magical. There's something about thyme. I think thyme is one of the great herbs. Another little stir, and we'll have a taste and see what it's like. See if we've got enough vinegar. Vegetables are just cooked. Just cooked. I'm going to give it a splash more because it's going to do wonders with the fattiness of the tuna. And this is going to be served bracingly cold. So straight away, we need to get it into a fridge and spread out on a tray or spread out on a flat dish so that it doesn't keep cooking. The worst thing you could do is pile this into a tight container, and then the middle will overcook and you'll end up with mushy vegetables. And something that's so simple: onions, carrot, a little bit of celery. I probably should have put some leek in there, to be honest, but I did put a couple of bits of daikon, and just the smell and the vibrancy, and it is so delicious. Finally, I'm just going to add some of this beautiful orange oil. So it's a Pendleton Estate blood orange pressed olive oil, and I'm just going to put a splash more of that. And we do this off the heat so that it doesn't disable that beautiful orange flavour and perfume. And you can see that I've made this quite oily. And the whole idea is that the vegetable juices that leach out of this beautiful little dice, the vinegar, the honey, come together to make this exquisite dressing for our tuna. So just give it a stir, make sure it's all nice and flat so that it doesn't overcook. And we need to bang that in the fridge to get it icy cold for service. Okay, so next up for our beautiful raw tuna, we need to get some sourdough toast in the oven. So I've got an old loaf, well, it's a couple of days old, of our sourdough that we make at the restaurant. And because it was still a little bit fresh, I did just pop it in the freezer for a bit so it's nice and hard and stiff. The idea being we want to shave these fine little wafers of sourdough, and they just add a crispness to the dish that is just magical. So using a sharp knife for this, it's probably going to damage the blade, but we can always sharpen it up a little bit more. Rather than a bread knife, we want to try and cut fine little slices of toast so that they're really see-through. And in the oven, they're going to turn into glass biscuits almost. So just let the blade do the work and cut off a whole bunch of these little fine toasts. The trick there is a little bit of freezer time or fridge time or a little staler, and it's much easier. Fresh bread would never be able to cut like this. And it's a great way to use up older bread. Once roasted, they'll keep in an airtight container for a couple of days. So So with our toasts really finely sliced, you could use a slicer if you had one at home. That's what we do at the restaurant, but a sharp knife does the trick anyway. So grab yourself a tray, and you want to give the tray a little splash of olive oil. Nothing too much, because once it warms up it becomes really, really liquid. And then just lay our toasts out nice and flat like that. Even that rubbishy one can go in. Okay, and then just a little bit more olive oil over the top, just a splash. Now these guys do not need any extra salt because the bread's already beautifully seasoned. So once they're all lubricated with a nice drink of olive oil, it's into the oven with these guys. So ideally not on a too hot oven, otherwise the outsides of the toast will go really crisp and dark and they'll be just rubbish. You want them to be crispy wafers, like a snack, like a crisp. Anyway, pop them in here and let them sit for a minute or two. For our next little part of this dish is we want to whip some Mungali quark. Now it doesn't have to be Mungali brand. You could use some ricotta or you could use some creme fraiche, but I really love this stuff. It's a beautiful product made here in Cairns up on the tablelands, one of the only rainforest dairies in the world. And this has that just delicious kind of lactic dairy flavour. Now lots of people will tell you don't put cheese with seafood. Well, I think it's all got to do with how you handle it. And there's something about the synergy between like that creamy lactic flavour of the quark, and it really kind of sits there beautifully in harmony with that rich umami, irony sort of flavour of the raw tuna. So into a largish vessel, we want to grab some of this quark, and you can see it's sort of like a cottage cheese. We don't need too much, just a couple of spoonfuls. And to that, I'm going to add some salt and a squeeze of lemon juice. Actually, we might, because I hate wasting the zest, put some of the zest of the lemon in there first. And just the perfume straight away is magical, as you can imagine. And then we're going to add a nice little squeeze, not too much, of the lemon juice, because as I said, the lactic flavour of the dairy is already quite strong. So just give that a little whisk up to make it a bit smoother. So the flavour profile there is a little lighter because we've whipped it slightly, lactic and creamy, and then a real brightness from the fresh lemon zest. And the salt kind of holds it all together. So that can go straight in the fridge. Where this dish will go wrong is serving too much of this cream cheese with the tuna. Yum. So we'll check on the toasts again. I can hear them sizzling. And they look great. So I've just flipped these guys over and we're going to let them rest. Okay, next up, the chives. So you're looking for chives that aren't wet. You want them nice and dry and crisp and plump. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a super sharp knife, because we want the knife to just glide through the chives, making perfect little rings. Now it's a pretty contentious issue. I don't always think with chives that finer is better. I actually like them to be the same length that they are round, but I'm sure there'll be many people who disagree with me. Grab my trusty dough scraper here. It's been an absolute winner, this thing. And just put those off to the side. The success here, the cornerstone of success, is all about that fantastic knife work we've done and the elegance with which we've cooked the vegetables. They're now icy cold. They should be crunchy and firm and beautiful and oily and perfectly seasoned. The dish is all about texture. It's the contrast between soft and creamy and lactic, and then these just delicious raw tuna dressed with crunchy vegetables. And I've got a few other little bits and bobs we're going to put on top as well. It's fantastic for one as an entree. It's great at a party. You can just put down platters down the middle and everyone's going to have a hoot. First of all, for the base, we need to add our beautiful whipped Bengali quark. Too much of this, it'll overpower everything else. So it's really important that we just have the right amount to the tuna. So for the amount I'm going to do on this plate, I'd say we'll just do the 2.5 spoons. We just want to encourage that to go out slightly, not too far, into the middle of the plate. And now it's time to slice the tuna. If you want, you can freeze this and then do it on a slicer, or you can just do it with a super sharp knife. For that, you want to use something long and slim. I've only got the little tail piece here. I'd probably prefer to use the top loin all the way up near the neck, but that's not always the case. So, provided we only use the front part here that doesn't get too sinewy, it'll be fine. So just using a super sharp knife, I'm just going to make our way through. Ooh. And slice some tuna. And just lay that almost like silky kind of handkerchiefs over the top of the cheese. You can see it's like almost see-through, but not too fine. We want it to have some tooth to it. So not in a sawing motion. It should look like it's been just shaved. And if your knife is sharp enough, you'll actually notice it gets almost like a pearlescent, shiny kind of appearance. Next, we need to dress the tuna with this fine preparation of vegetables. So, icy cold. We're going to start spooning these guys all over the top. Plenty of the oil and juice, plenty of the dressing. But still need to be able to see that our tuna's under there. Don't want to hide it totally. So next up, the chives. Just scatter those over the top. So that's like making a pizza, really. You want every single little mouthful to be the same, garnished equally. Next, we'll put on a little bit of Davidson plum powder. This stuff's magical and I love it. It has such a tart crispness to it. We just want to flick it over. Too much will be cloying, but just enough to really spark up that tuna and add that extra little bit of acidity. And then finger lime. So we're just going to start squeezing some of the finger lime over the top. And we're right at the end of citrus season at the moment. And so we're still getting an abundance of finger limes, but they won't be around for much longer. And these guys just add just an absolute pop of flavour. Crunchy and sour, almost slightly ruby grapefruit / eucalypty as well. And I've got the last little couple of bits of thyme here, which I'll flick over for good measure, for that herbaceous note. And then we have some amaranth that I picked up at the market on Friday. I just want to tear the little grass seeds down because they're too big. They'll be mealy. But like this, it's like a fantastic pop of colour and again, more of those herbaceous notes. Okay, and finally, just one more lick of this beautiful, juicy orange oil. And you want the oil because it helps lubricate the palate. And finally is this incredible Yarra Valley salmon caviar. I've been using this stuff for about 25 years. It is just incredible. the pearls of crunchy, salty seafood like umami bomb is just delicious. And they're just amazing. So we're going to spoon over a couple of these pops of just amazing hand harvested Yarra Valley salmon caviar. I can't think of anything that screams sunshine on a plate more than that. Yellowfin tuna, raw, fine pickled vegetables, salmon pearls, and let's not forget our beautiful sourdough toasts, which we serve on the side. So grab a napkin, pile up your toasts, be generous with the toast, not stingy, and serve it immediately. Its success is completely bound to the warm, super crunchy, fresh toast, and then this icy cold preparation of tuna. There you have it, team. It's simplicity, but it's simplicity done properly. There's something so magical about what can happen with the least number of ingredients and just an elegant and deft touch and fantastic knife skills. Great to see you again. The pops of the finger lime, the salmon pearls, the crunchy vegetables, knockout.